I'm so glad you're here listening to the Sustain Your Passion podcast. I'm Genesis, your host and business development expert. If you're ready to make a bigger impact and income while helping others, then you're in the right place. Thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to help you sustain your passion. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Sustain Your Passion podcast. Today, I have one of my best friends on to share with you her wisdom, her insights, her advice, her thoughts, experiences, all the things. She's lovely. Probably some funny jokes too. We are going to talk about money and getting your financial priorities in order with Michelle's recommendations of how to do that. So, here to introduce yourself is Michelle Onaka. Go ahead, Michelle. Tell the folks where to find you and what you do.
Hello, thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Michelle Onaka. I live in Oregon as well. Genesis and I used to go to graduate school together a long time ago.
Yes.
Um, and so I have a business, Intentional Money Life, and it can be found on most social media. It's intentionalmoneylife.com, and then, Instagram is Intentional Money Life, a lot of those places. And I share a lot of information about money and investing and prioritizing things and understanding taxes and all sorts of things like that. I used to work with college students, and one of the things that I loved doing with them was teaching them about money, helping them understand, why they think about money the way they think about money and how they can use money to get ahead and to create the life that they're excited about rather than just living the life that is expected of them. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. I am so excited for this conversation because I feel like we kind of have two sides of the same coin around money. Like, I want to help folks make more money, right? And then you want to help them be wise with it because it's one of those things that once you start making a certain amount, you get new options, right? You have new available paths for you. And so it makes sense to have new questions and new things to learn. And especially if you come from, like me, a financial background where your parents weren't able to provide that type of education. And gosh, no schooling ever gave me like very good information about money. You end up getting to a point where it's like, okay, well, I've got some extra spending in my spending funds in my budget. Guess I'll just spend it when we could be a bit more intentional.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I started doing this. So I worked with first generation college students and students from families with limited access to funds. And so like a lot of these students were getting ready to graduate college and make money, like potentially more money than their families have ever made, and really have no skills or experience in managing that. And like, what do I actually do with that money? And it's so easy to either spend the money or give the money away without really being intentional about it. And then just finding yourself in this like grind of working because that's you need to afford your lifestyle that you didn't really create on purpose, but it
Right.
just happened. And then
Yes.
you just have to keep working because now you have to live this lifestyle and
Right. Oh, that's so frustrating. And often something, I talk with a lot of my clients about is when you're deciding to start a business, there are things you need to start thinking about differently. And part of that is that if you're constantly living paycheck to paycheck, right? Or in your business, month to month, sale to sale, that can get really freaking stressful and actually make it harder for you to sell, make it more difficult for you to show up in your business because there's so much writing on that next dollar coming in, which is why I really love the financial priorities that you've put together because it starts with something fairly accessible. And even in passion to paychecks, like I teach my clients how to sell at least $1,000 offers. So that could be part of what helps you with priority number one. So, Michelle, can you talk to us about that first priority that you would recommend for anyone?
yeah, so the first priority, and so by the way, you can find this on my Instagram. It is pinned on my Instagram. So it's the very first thing you'll see. It's called the Financial Priorities List, and it's just a guideline for setting your financial priorities. There's also, if you go to the link that's on there, it goes to a blog post and it's actually a video that goes a little bit more in depth in each of these priorities, just so you know.
Nice.
So the very first priority is an emergency fund with $1,000 to 1 month of necessary expenses. And so, yeah, working with college students, it's helpful to think about like how much, I mean, they might not even know how many expenses they're talking about. And so
Right.
it's you get to decide, somewhere between 1 month and $1,000. You need to have that. So as a at a baseline, everyone really needs to have some form of emergency fund, something to fall back on because there are so many things could happen, whether it's in your normal life, in your business, if you have a house, if you have kids. I mean, there are so many things that could happen. And so just having some money set aside for emergencies is like the basic first like security step, basically.
Yeah, that makes so much sense too. And thinking about like the journey you were talking about earlier with, first gen college students that came from low income backgrounds, like that was me, right? I came out of school and was like, holy crap, I'm making way more money than I ever did and more than the parent that I lived with, at least, and that I knew anything about really like financially. And so then to get to the point where I had hundreds of dollars extra in my budget every month because I was a budgeter and so I could see it. It was really tempting to be like, well, let me just, lifestyle creep and start spending on more. And I did. I went and got a car I traded in my paid off car for a car with payment. And it's like, yeah, if I had not done that, I probably would have been saving a lot more at first and
Yeah.
maybe would have had some more options. But I feel like what's so great about this first priority is that it's baked into it that you need to be aware of your expenses. Like, it would be nice if everyone had clarity on what happens in a month. How much money do you need and where does it go? And what is fixed that you have no say over right now? And what could you maybe get cheaper if you called for? And then what is totally slush that like you could be eating beans and rice, but you're eating steak? Like that's a choice, right? And so how do you look at all of those numbers and make meaning out of it to say, I'd like to have at least 1 month cushion so I'm not in that constant panic of I need the next sale, I need the next dollar, which
Yeah.
feels pretty accessible as a first goal. I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, for some people, I even break it down to like, okay, do you have any emergency fund? You have nothing. Let's get to $20. Let's get to
Mhm.
$50. Like we can break it down as much as we need, but getting up to that, yeah, like, okay, what is 1 month of my expenses? And what does that need to look like? And what's my eventual goal? That would be kind of a good first step for sure.
Totally. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. So then what would be the next priority? So let's say, okay, we got our emergency fund with either 1,000 or 1 month of expenses. What's next?
So, if you work for an employer that offers a retirement match, that would be the next one. You want to get that full retirement match. And so, why would you want to do this? Well, that's part of your pay.
Mhm.
Your employer was like, "Hey, we want to pay you $60,000 a year," and you were like, "Nah, I just want 50,000." That doesn't
Oof,
make any sense, right?
right.
So, if you have an employer that is willing to give you a match, you want to get that full match. And so, it's important to understand what is required to do that. Make sure that you fully understand your employer. Do you need to put in 6% and they'll put in 3%? What exactly is required to get that match? But if you have access to a match, then definitely make sure you get it. And side note, I have never had access to one of these before, and I'm going to, I think, starting in
Ooh,
February, and I'm very excited.
nice. That's awesome. So this was one of those like, oh man, one day when I have a job like this, like I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those things that it's easy to put off, like saving for retirement. And even the matching piece, I am pretty sure I maybe had jobs. I don't actually know. You would know better than me because we had shared jobs for a while. Maybe I had an option. I don't genuinely know.
None of the higher
Okay.
ed jobs have offered this.
Well, then
So,
no. So then maybe I haven't. So that's good. I wasn't missing anything. But like, who would you think if somebody was sitting there and was like, I know I have benefits around retirement, but like, I don't know even who to start talking
yeah.
to?
Yeah.
Who might be that person in their employer's office that they should talk to?
I would say it depends on how big the office is. Of course, anyone that's HR adjacent in anything that's similar to HR, at like a large university, there is like employee benefits and there's a retirement specialist in the employee benefits. But if you're in a smaller place, like start with HR and say, "Hey, I need to know this information." If they're offering something like a 401k, they are legally required to offer you certain information about it. So they absolutely have the information about what kind of account you can get, whether there's a match, what do you need to do, what are the investment options in it. They have that information and they absolutely can give that to you. And they probably did, but maybe you didn't notice or didn't see it or anything. So definitely go ask questions.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like when you get onboarded to a job, they give you so much information. It makes sense if you're not, registering, oh, retirement, anything. So if you're hearing this and you're wondering, that's a great tip. Like, go just check and see what information is there, and just get started finding out what your options are. So then hopefully you can take advantage of free money, literally. Like, depending on how it's set up, it could be, yeah, a really, really smart decision.
Yes, for sure.
So then what would be our next step?
So the next step is pay off all debt with an interest rate over 10%. So, of course, this means that you first have to understand what debts do I have? Do I have credit card debt? What's the interest rate on it? Did I get any outside student loans? What's the interest rate on that? Do I have a car loan? What's the interest rate on it? So, really looking at all the debt that you have and figuring out what are the interest rates that are on these things and what will that mean? And so usually 10%, over 10% is more of a credit card. Most credit cards actually have interest in the like 12 to 29% range. So
12 to 29,
yeah.
that is bananas,
And
almost
and if
30% interest.
And if you
Whew.
got a credit card that has good benefits, chances are it has a higher interest rate. So
Mhm.
sometimes people don't realize they're like, oh, I'm going to get this cool card and it has all these benefits. And then you really need to be paying off that credit card every single month. Otherwise, you're actually losing a lot more than you're gaining from those benefits. So
Yeah, that makes
but I've
sense.
also I've seen students with outside student loans in like 14%. I've
Mm,
seen people with car loans, especially if they didn't have great credit when they got that car.
mhm,
So
mhm.
definitely looking at what loans do you have, what interest rates do you have. If you have anything over 10%, really like working hard to get that paid off and getting that paid off as soon as possible because you're losing a lot of money if you're at that high of a rate. You're really losing a lot of money each month in having that outstanding debt.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And so I feel like I've seen folks mention somewhere between 5% to 7%, maybe even 8%, but 10 feels kinda high. I don't know. What do you think? How'd you come up with 10%? Talk to me about, like, how does that work? Where did that number come from? I just have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. So partly I wanted to break up the debts to different kind of categories for this
Mhm.
guideline.
Cool.
And so if you look back, and we might get to go over it, but there are several different places. So like a couple steps later, I'm going to say now pay off debts over around 7-ish%. I wanted to be able to break it up and I wanted to say basically if you have high interest debt, get it paid off now. And so
Mm,
10% makes sense because at least if you're thinking about what else you can do with your money, something like investing in the stock market has historically returned something in the 9 to 10% range.
mhm.
And so basically anything over 10%, chances are you're not going to have any way to invest the money and grow it faster than that. So you might as well just get it paid off.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And yeah, I could see that being, hard to get in front of if you have something over 10% anyway. So that makes sense that you would start there. And I like that approach of like, you basically took the big goal, right? Get to the point of 5% or more and ultimately no debt, but 5%, whatever, and your mortgage and all that. Um, but you broke it down to make it more doable. So you have something to aim for rather than just this like no debt ever bad, don't have debt. It's like, okay, there's different types of debt and we can be more strategic in looking into which do we need to pay off first. Because yeah, if you have a credit card, a student loan, and a mortgage, you're probably going to want to pay off that credit card bill first because it's going to be the higher interest rate, which can be really helpful if you're not doing something like the what is it, the snowball method or whatever, where it's like you're looking to make decisions about where do I put these extra funds. Starting with a high interest rate makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, later, like when you get to, so people are always asking, like, which debt do I start with and whatever. And if you just
Yeah.
break it up into like the 10% and above and you start with that, that's good. When you get to debts that are like super close together, it can become a little bit different. But when you're looking at something that's over 10%, just pay it off.
Yeah, that
Just
makes
pay it
sense.
off.
Right. Start there.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's imagine 10% and over, we're done. What's next on your priority list for us?
So step 4 is build your emergency fund up to 3 months of necessary expenses. So we
Mm,
started out with that 1 month-ish. Maybe you just started out with $1,000, depending on how long this situation has taken you. But now it's time to really build that emergency fund up because truthfully, 1 month is not enough. 1 month is a starter. It's a like, oh crap, like really, really something. There's something to fall back on, but really you need to build that fund up higher. And so 3 months is not necessarily a full emergency fund either. I broke this one down as well, just like I broke down the interest rate one.
cool.
But building up to 3 months is a really good step to take now because, yeah, anything could happen that could cost more than 1 month of expenses. So once you've gotten rid of that high interest rate debt and you are getting the employer's full match, now it's really time to buckle down and get more money into that emergency fund.
That makes sense. Okay. And how would you recommend folks think about like the motivator for having that 3 months? Like, I know there's the rainy day classic, there's the you lost your job classic, like fear-based thing, right? But do you have any other ways of reframing that of like plotting for yourself? Or I feel like you're so great at saving for goals and like your travel and things like that. So I don't know. I'd just love to hear you talk more about the concept of holding your own savings account
Yeah,
for yourself like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Because it can be so liberating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to realize that with money, it's like you start out a little bit of money. That first $20 that you have, maybe that's a little bit of security for you, right? And then you build that up a little bit more and you're getting a little more secure. Well, soon you start to get a little bit of freedom. Like it switches from security to freedom and kind of in the middle there, that 3 month of an emergency fund, that could give you the freedom to leave a job that is toxic. That could give you the opportunity to get out of a relationship that is not healthy for you. That could give you the opportunity to not have to rely on parents or other people. I mean, really, there's a lot of freedom, I think, in having some money set aside and it is strictly for emergencies. This isn't going to be the thing that you're going to take to Cuba or whatever, which would be
Mhm.
fun. But it's definitely like there is a lot of freedom in the security of having this money set aside that can help you get out of whatever bad or good, it can help you take good opportunities. Maybe you can reach and start that business because you know you have some money to fall back on, or maybe you can decide to go full time in your business and leave some other job because you have something to fall back on. So it's really, really, I think it's kind of life changing, honestly, to have some backup money.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard folks call it a freedom fund rather than
Okay.
emergency fund for the same purpose of flipping that script of like, yeah, you might need this for emergencies and that's one way of looking at it. And it also could be like you said, like maybe that's also what gives you the freedom to leave something that's
Yeah.
not great for you. Because
Yeah.
money realistically is what gives us many opportunities in our country and world.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
being the owner of that opportunity for yourself can be so empowering.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. Okay, what's next for us?
So, step 5 is if you're eligible, max an HSA and at least partially fund an IRA and invest in both.
Okay,
So,
what are those acronyms?
yes. So the HSA is a health savings account, and that is something you can only have if you have a high deductible health plan. Now, a high
Mm.
deductible health plan is not just a health plan with a high deductible. That would be
What?
too simple. Yeah.
Who makes these
There's
rules?
very specific rules on what is considered to be a high deductible health plan. Like it has to say like HDHP, high
Oh,
deductible health plan.
wow. Okay. It's like a
Very specific
designated
words.
thing. Huh.
Yes, and if you do have a high deductible health plan, then you are eligible for an HSA. And the cool thing about said HSA is that in every single other option in life, you earn money, it gets taxed at some point, right? You earn money, you pay taxes on it, then you invest it, or maybe you earn money and you don't pay taxes on it, you invest it, and then you pay taxes at the end. The
Right.
HSA is literally the only time you can potentially avoid paying taxes at all and still invest the money.
Wow.
So it's really, really cool if you already have an HDHP and that makes sense for you, and if you can get the money into the HSA and then potentially invest it. But yeah, so like if you say you're offered an HDHP at your job, you're offered an HSA at your job, You can contribute directly from your paycheck to your HSA. You're going to save money in FICA taxes. You're going to
Mm,
save money in federal income taxes. You're going to save money in state income taxes.
mm.
Then you can invest all or a portion of that money, let it grow for like 20 years, go and take the money out tax free and pay for health things.
Hmm, that's cool. Even way later, you can use it for health stuff.
Even
So,
way later.
so predictably, right, we kind of assume that your health expenses will get more as you get older, right? That
Yeah,
there might be more issues. So you can
right.
just be
So it's
like
like there's
saving for
no
that.
way. Yeah, there's no way you're
Huh.
not going to have enough health expenses.
Yeah.
And if you had it for long enough, if you were old enough, you could get money out in other ways and you can take penalties
Mm,
and stuff if you really needed to. But really, who's not going to have a bunch of health expenses one day? So,
right. Yeah. In one way or the other. Like, and there's a lot of stuff that can fall under that category, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
So, like, that's only relevant if you have the HDHP. It's only relevant, all of
yeah.
those kinds of things. If you are going to invest the HSA money, that means you're not going to take it out, which means you're going to have to cover your health expenses yourself.
Mm,
So, there are a lot of steps to kind of think about if this is something
yeah.
you're interested in doing. But if you're in a position where you could put the money in and start investing it, save money on the side to pay for your health stuff out of pocket now, and invest that money and let it grow, that would be really awesome.
Gotcha.
So that one's only relevant for some people, but I always want to make sure at least it's in there so people are aware of it. The
Yeah.
other one, the kind of more main one, would be an IRA. So that's an individual retirement arrangement. A lot of people say account. Same
Yep. I
idea, same
definitely would
thing.
have thought it was
Yeah,
account,
it's
not
an
arrangement.
individual.
Okay.
I mean, it's an individual account, so I don't know why it needs to be arrangement. But anyways,
Yeah.
so there are, so this is basically if you don't have a 401k or something, as long as you're making money, if you're 18 years old and you are earning money, you can open one of these on your own. So,
Mm,
like, I didn't get access to any retirement accounts until I was like 28-ish. If I had really had the financial education that I wish I would have had, I would have started an IRA when I started working and I was like 14 or whatever,
mm.
and then I would have just started putting some money in this. But so this is a way for you to invest for your own future, invest for your own retirement. Kind of back to that like power and freedom, like having money set aside gives you power over your own life and it gives you the freedom to make the decisions that are good for you. And so starting to put some money in retirement accounts is going to be a good idea. This is, of course, assuming that you're earning income because you have to earn income to fund an IRA. Um, but yeah, so getting money into an IRA and investing that money, that was my other main issue. So first, I didn't contribute to IRAs very much. And second, the IRA I did contribute to was when I was 24. I opened one at a credit union into a CD. It made nothing. I did not continue contributing to it. Wasn't particularly helpful later. I think, 8 years later or whatever, when I finally moved the money, I had like earned $50 or something.
Oh
Great.
man.
Yeah. But one thing to know about
Mm,
IRAs is that I can't go back now and fund my IRA from when I was 18 or 19 or 20. Like there is a limit and I can only put in that up to that limit for each year. And so you have until the tax deadline to fund it. So if you're listening to this before April of 2024 and you have not done an IRA for 2023, you might be able to do that. There are some things to be aware of, so I would definitely look into it. For instance, if you make too much money, you might not be able to contribute, or you might not be able to make a deduction if it's a traditional IRA. Like there are some things to look into. So reach out to someone for support around that. But if you're eligible for an IRA and you have some money that could be invested, that would be a really good step to take.
gotcha. Okay. So at this point, you are looking at, 3 months of a fund that is there for emergencies and freedom and all those good things. You're, hopefully paying down your 10% or more interest rate.
It's
And
done. Your
okay,
debt
so
over
at that point, you're
10%
done
is paid
there.
off at this
Okay.
point. Yep.
Yep.
If you had access to a retirement account, you are already getting the match. So you're already investing some there. Of course, not
Mhm.
everyone has access to one of those. And so making sure that you are starting to invest.
I love that. And so these are the first five priorities of a list of 13. And as Michelle said, the full list is pinned on her Instagram at Intentional Money Life. But I think the main thing I want to end on with you is how brilliant I think the way you set this up is because it feels so possible. And as someone that has been through your course, I know, all of the material you provide makes it so that doing this feels so much less scary. Like, no joke, hearing the term IRA, hearing the terms investing, like, I just immediately go like, nope, it's over my head, not for me. But seeing it this way, it's like, okay, wait, maybe I could do this. And like, because of our work together, I have started an IRA. I have invested some in it. I have done all the previous steps there. I think I'm down on like step 10 or something like that. It's one of those where it's like, okay, I'm doing pretty good. I'm getting there. There's still some like just, business growth stuff around, gotta, make sure I'm stable at this income and then can make some more to, fund those like last year's IRA, which is in hopefully in the cards. But that's part of, I think, something that our educational institutions just don't do well on, right? And this is typically information similarly to entrepreneurship education. Someone has to seek out. And I just really appreciate that you're putting this information out there and you're making it so accessible, not only in that your blogs are wealth of knowledge, like you could find information about all of these steps pretty much, and way more if you follow Michelle, but also it just feels so much more doable than a lot of the advisors out there that are specifically talking to those high income earners. Whereas I feel like you fill that gap between I have never thought about a budget to maybe I should be aware of my money and then make some decisions about it to set myself up for the future, but in really like small and actionable ways so that it's not, well, I can't do anything until I have all of this done. It's
Yeah.
actually, doable in
Yeah.
little pieces. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I also think that there are so many people out there in the money space that are so prescriptive. They're like, you need to do this, and this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. Don't ask questions. This is just the way that it is. People don't usually talk about the like all of the gray and all of the like, well, based on your goals and your values, maybe like this is going to make more sense. And so, in trying to create things, even like this guideline, I tried to think about the various people who would be looking at this and making sure like their goals are included. So in step 7, it's saying like focus on your short and long term goals because we're not going to just keep doing all of this stuff to like no end. Like the
Mm.
point is to create a life that you're excited about, not a life that I'm excited for you to live. Right.
Right, totally. And if you don't have clarity on that, it's really easy to either just keep spending every dollar because what's the point in investing if you don't know what you're, investing or saving towards?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, so you just spend it. We're not thinking that it's ever going to be possible for you. And so what? You just sit in a savings account and
Yeah.
earn those dismal like 10 cents a month or
Yeah.
whatever.
Or
And then,
even
like you
thinking,
said, get 10 years down the road and be like, well, crap, I could have been investing that.
yeah, or thinking like, I don't have enough money to invest, which I'm pretty sure I've
Yeah.
heard from you before,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Oh,
it doesn't
yeah.
feel like I have enough money to invest. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
Genesis, you make more money than I do. Like, what do you
I
mean you
know,
don't
but
have enough money to invest?
I like to own it. I think that's definitely like my own thing that I'm still like working through, right? Is the scarcity mindset of like, but once I invest it, it's gone, right? And I
Yeah.
can't touch it. And it's like expensive to me to take it back.
Yeah.
And that feels risky still
Yeah.
because I think there's just still so much financial trauma in me that's like,
Yeah.
no, the whole world could fall apart. So I need to hoard months and months of income that's
Right.
accessible to me. And so I have it in a
Yeah.
high in what is
HYSA, high yield
uh-huh,
savings account.
high yield. Okay, a high yield savings account because of our work together. So I'm feeling proud of that step, but like
Yes.
you're totally right that it's a choice of like I even though I could rationalize that, well, I'm gonna spend $100 on a restaurant this month and I'm never gonna get that
And
money
that money is not going to help you in any way later either. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
But instead, I could be investing it, and I
Yeah.
actually did pull up the investment calculator the other day and was like, "What would happen if we took, like, half of this and put it," So I'm open to
You're
it,
getting
but
there.
I think that's what's so great about having leaders like you in this space is I don't feel rushed and I don't feel wrong for being at my pace and knowing
Yeah.
what I need to feel safe with my money. And like, I've never felt judged by you to be like, well, that's dumb, even though like we both know I could be investing more,
Yeah.
like we don't live in this false reality that that's not an option. But
Right.
you also don't pressure me to be like, why are you going on vacation?
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I think that you've worked hard. You should go on vacation, right? Like there's nothing wrong with going on vacation. There's nothing wrong with spending money on whatever it is that you want to spend money on. And truthfully, yeah, I wouldn't judge anyone for anything. If you want to like go buy a $500 bag and that makes you happy, awesome. Now, if you didn't plan for that and you're going to go put that onto a credit card and you're doing this because it's an emotional spending that you haven't decided to work through, I'm not going to judge you for it, but I would say like, oh, hold on now, like
Yeah.
let's actually think this through and let's figure out like what's driving this and like how can we make better steps for you. But I mean, it's all about individuals, right? Money is all about the individual. And if you don't know where you're going, or if you haven't thought about it, or whatever, or you haven't really worked through your childhood crap, because we would all have that. And
Yeah.
especially, like you were saying, when you grow up in a household that doesn't have a lot of money, like it can be really hard to do anything besides save money. It can be like, okay, I'm going to save money because safety, like saving money is security, right?
Right.
And even for me, like, I am a natural saver, I would say. And as a natural saver, you work so hard to save this money. Why would you go gamble it? Like that was literally
Right.
what I
Yeah.
used to think about investing. I used to think that investing was gambling. And
Mm.
so why would I do that? And so I had to completely shift my mindset. And the way that I had to do that was partly by just learning. I
Mm.
had to really, really learn all of this stuff because I wouldn't have been able to start investing confidently without actually understanding how it worked.
Mm.
And I understand that like everyone, there's a lot of things that like people need the education. People need to like think about, how they grew up and what they think about money and what are their unconscious beliefs about money. They need to think about those things. They need to think about their goals and their priorities. Like there are so many things that need to happen before someone can really be ready to invest. And yeah, we're all going to do that on our own timeline, and that's perfectly fine.
Totally. It's so true. It's being intentional, whatever that means for you, right? And just
Yeah.
taking control of your money to live your best life. I love that.
Yeah.
So, yay. Thank you for sharing with us today. It was a pleasure to hear more about your business and where you're at with things and how you're helping people. One last question I have for you is, at this point, do you feel like you have any general advice based on the conversation? Like any last thing you want to make sure you get in before we wrap up today?
I would just say, yeah, don't be scared. Don't feel ashamed about your money situation. Whether you're making $500,000 and, living paycheck to paycheck, or, making $20,000 and living paycheck to paycheck, or you're not living paycheck to paycheck, like it doesn't matter. You don't have to feel ashamed. You don't have to feel scared. You can improve your situation. You can use your money intentionally, and you just need to figure out what the very first step is and take that step. You don't even have to worry about what are the next steps. You can literally just say, what is the very first step that I need to take and how can I get to that? And then you'll start to build a little bit of confidence in yourself as you start to see yourself, opening up a high yield savings account to put that emergency fund or whatever. I mean, I had so many college students that were like, "Oh my God, I got $5 in interest this month," or whatever.
Right.
Like, we
Yeah,
can celebrate these like tiny little things, but
totally.
like they make a big difference in the end, even if it isn't to your actual bottom line, but if it's just to your confidence
Mm.
and your like ability to believe that like you can actually do what you want to do.
Yeah, that's so true. That is 100% required, right? Like that agency to take control of it and push your energy towards something and have intention behind it. I feel like there's a conversation out there about like money is energy and it's kind of the same dynamic
Mm,
of like wherever you focus your energy, wherever you focus your money is what will grow and bloom
yeah,
and turn into, or you're not going to and your energy will leak and your money will leak and that's okay too. But if you want to, you can always start that channeling process. And
yeah.
so, as in case you can't tell, I'm a big fan of Michelle and her work. I highly recommend anyone listening go and follow her. Thanks again, Michelle, and I hope to have you back on the podcast in future episodes. So, listeners, if you hear anything on this episode, if you see Michelle's content and you're like, "Oh my gosh, Genesis, get her on here, interview her about that," I bet I could talk her into it. So maybe we could do this again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yay. Thanks, Michelle. Talk to you later. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sustain Your Passion podcast. If this episode helped you gain a bit more clarity, courage, or confidence, please share it with your friends on social media or in a text. It would mean the world to me. Thanks in advance for sharing this episode. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.